Remember when that balloon was going over the country and Biden told us that it wasn't actually sending or transmitting any information back to Beijing? And remember when we had Tony Shaffer on the show, who is a retired Army colonel and was a CIA trained intelligence officer? And he said, of course, it's transmitting information back to Beijing. Of course it is. Yeah, we just found out yesterday from an NBC News report that, of course, it was transmitting information back to Beijing. I personally am shocked that the Biden administration would lie about such a thing. I mean, when have they ever lied to us before? Joining us right now is the aforementioned Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, retired from the United States Army, now with Project Sentinel. And, well, I guess, again, you called it, Tony. Of course, it was transmitting information back to Beijing.
I know, Larry. I'm just sitting here remembering our conversation. Is like, yeah, it's maneuvering itself. I think
Right.
it's receiving signals from somewhere. So if it's receiving signals, I'm pretty sure it's probably transmitting them too.
Right.
And I
Thank you.
hate,
They would have us believe that it was just randomly floating with, the jet
yeah,
stream was just pushing it in this direction. That's all. There was no controls.
no. And now there's evidence it was able to kind of circle around a couple of times when it missed something. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's under control. And I find the whole thing not only distasteful, it's dangerously stupid. And you have to ask yourself: was this done because of incompetence or because of planned, undermining of our national security policy? Because Larry, they saw this thing coming in the Pacific, tracked it over Alaska, ample opportunities to take it down gently over Utah, let it come down in a controlled way, like we talked about. You could just punch a couple of holes in it. You could take there's no reason to blow the thing up. But they let it go ahead and complete its mission. And we joked about that. But Babylon B joked about it, saying Joe Biden will shoot it down as soon as it completes its mission. And sure enough, that's what he did.
Yeah. So let's explore a couple of different options here. You just sort of danced
Sure.
around it, whether it's incompetence or willful neglect or deliberate actions. First of all, is there any possible way, Tony Shaffer, that the military and the US government did not know that this thing was still being controlled and still transmitting back to Beijing? Could they have gotten that wrong?
I know that they tried their best to make sure that it was isolated. That is to say, that when it was in our airspace, since they weren't allowed to shoot it down, they tried to basically electronically isolate it. Larry, the problem with that is to be able to jam something at that altitude from the ground is nearly impossible. So I think they gave it their old college try, and they thought they did a good job. But no, they did know that the chances of being successful were minimal, and yet they portrayed it because they were told to. It's like, oh no, we jammed it. They didn't jam it. So I think the Department of Defense at the senior level, as if we didn't know this, with Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley in charge, are compromised. They are political animals who will respond to political guidance from the White House. So what the Pentagon said about this was politically motivated.
So you think that the Pentagon or the leadership of the Pentagon might be compromised for political purposes by the people
Yes,
who, control their destinies? That would be President Biden. But then
right,
there's an open question as to whether President Biden is compromised himself or his family
right.
because of payments from China. I mean, that's not outside the realm of possibility. We know that the Biden family, multiple members of the Biden family, have received money, including his daughter-in-law, who is a school counselor. Why she would be
Right.
getting 6 or 7 figures from China, no one can answer.
I think she makes a heck of a General Zhao's chicken. I think they want her recipe, Larry.
Yeah.
They were going for the recipe. All kidding aside, no, it's very clear that there were much money laundering. I mean, if it goes to the family, it goes to the Biden crime syndicate. And at this point, based on Tony Bobulinski and others who have come forward and said, yeah, look, the big guy is Joe Biden. To me, this is impeachable. This goes beyond hush money to a prostitute, eye roll, that is being orchestrated today as a major crime. We're talking about a complete compromise of the president of the United States selling his office while he was vice president, and now China is receiving its payoff. I think that's why we're doing so little to push
Yeah.
back on Z, removing U.S. from being the fiat currency, doing provocative things like this. I think because Joe Biden has taken a knee, so to speak.
Well, and as I mentioned earlier this evening with Congressman Ben Cline of Virginia, the president point blank said to the American people they were not able to transmit any information to Beijing via this
He lied.
balloon.
He lied.
We blocked it. Yeah, this now ventures into not just willful neglect or cover. This is now a cover up.
Right. And it is cover up because again, Larry, they knew for early on when the thing came into Alaskan airspace, it had a mission. That mission was to spy. That mission to spy was successful because the Biden administration made the policy decision to allow it to move across the country unmolested. Speaking of molestation, just saying, some molestation is good, apparently bad. Molesting Chinese balloons, bad, according to the Biden White House. Who'd have thought?
All right.
And then
Uh,
doing a very dramatic takedown in the Atlantic Ocean after for some military effect. It's completely nonsensical.
Meanwhile, while we've got you, we'd be remiss not to check in on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And of course, neither of us are any friends of the thugs out of Moscow, and they just gave us
Yeah,
another reason to dislike this horrific government. They seized a reporter, a Wall Street Journal reporter, and boy, we see this all the time. These authoritarians, they grab a Western
yeah.
reporter and accuse them of spying.
Right. So look, again, as I keep saying, I'm not pro-Russian. I'm not pro-Ukrainian. I'm just like trying to look at what's going on. And yeah, this is another act of thuggery by Putin. Putin knows exactly what the guy was doing. The guy was out. He's a reporter. He was out trying to verify something would actually help the Russians one way or another. Verify the number of tanks they're producing. Basically, apparently, from the people I've spoken to, his job was to go out and verify just by observation. Gee, are the Russians making as many tanks as they claim? That's it. Now, the Russians say that's defense information. I got it. Yeah, okay, technically it is. But the guy's a reporter. His job is to go out and report. So I think this is going back, Larry, to Cold War thuggery.
Yeah.
Putin is an animal of the Cold War. This is more Cold War shenanigans.
Do you think that the ridiculous behavior of the administration with regard to Brittany Griner, the women's basketball player who was arrested on charges of marijuana possession, and then we ended up trading a arms dealer, a Russian arms dealer,
Right.
to release this woman? Does that you had mentioned when we talked about this when that story first came down that this invites more people to be seized by the Russian government?
Well, they're still holding a Marine Corps, a former Marine right now, Larry. Of
Yeah.
course, this is gaining leverage and the ability of Vladimir Putin to hold the West hostage. Absolutely, especially the Wall Street Journal. Do you think the Wall Street Journal is going to just sit back and not do anything now? This is a major event, and again, because the Biden administration is so feckless, Putin's going to be able to get something big out of this because our side is just so stupid at this point.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, listen, there was pressure on the administration to release this African American, lesbian, famous basketball player, and so he was constantly under political pressure from the media
Right.
and from interest groups. So he did something that was probably not in America's best national security interest, just to calm the headlines down and get a good PR kick. Imagine the pressure he's going to be under when a reporter is at stake here.
Right. And this is where I think we're at because he was so feckless in this Griner issue. The Russians won that. They won it big. So
Yeah.
once you give a bully a win, Larry, the bully's going to go back and do it again, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and it's almost like we don't treat Russia as the pariah that they are. I mean, anytime you or I suggest, hey, maybe there's a way toward peace in Ukraine, we're called friends of Vladimir Putin, that we're on the side of the Russians here and we're soft on Russia. But look at them; they don't treat this guy like he's the pariah that they claim he is.
Right.
But they just strongly publicly condemned Putin's actions here. That's it. That's all they've done.
No, Larry, and they've left all these back doors within the sanctions for all the oligarchs that paid them off. That is the Biden folks to still get benefit out of it. That's
Right.
the thing. The sanctions are Swiss cheese. There's all sorts of holes in them left open for those that have paid their dues to Team Biden. That's what's going on here, and it's time people wake up to that fact.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time here. Real fast though, between Russia and China,
Yeah.
because it looks like we're sort of helping both regimes out here. Are we prepared on both fronts here, Atlantic and Pacific, to actually engage militarily? Because it looks like that's what it's leading to.
So the Pacific is a major theater of operations that arguably, Larry, we would have a hard time operating in. We need to have full carrier forces with good contingency plans and huge logistics. People need to go back and look at something called Plan Orange. Plan Orange was that developed between the interwar years of between World War I and World War II, which actually was the plan used to defeat the Japanese. We
All
need a
right.
Plan Orange for the 21st century. We don't have that.
There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. Thank you, Tony.